You have been looking at blue eyes your entire life and you have never actually seen blue pigment. Not once. Because it doesn't exist. There is no blue substance anywhere inside a blue eye. No dye, no color molecule, nothing that would register as blue under a microscope. And yet you see blue. Vivid, unmistakable, sometimes almost electric blue. So the question isn't really why some people have blue eyes. The question is, what exactly are you looking at when you look at them? Most people, if you ask them, would say eye color is simple. It's genetic. Mom had blue, dad had blue, you got blue. And that explanation feels complete because it answers the question you thought you were asking, but it doesn't come anywhere near answering the real one. Because genetics tells you why the machinery is set up the way it is. It doesn't tell you what the machinery is actually doing. And what it's doing turns out to be something far stranger, far more physical, and honestly far more beautiful than most people ever find out. Here's where it starts. Every human eye, every single one, regardless of what color it appears, contains a layer of tissue called the stroma. And the stroma is filled with cells. Those cells can carry varying amounts of a pigment called melanin. If you have a lot of melanin packed into those cells, light hits the surface of your iris, gets absorbed, and what reflects back is brown. Dark, warm, rich brown. The melanin drinks the light. That's all brown eyes are. A high concentration of melanin doing exactly what melanin evolved to do, absorb. But here's the part that changes how you see this. If those cells carry very little melanin, almost none, then the light doesn't get absorbed. It enters the stroma, bounces around between the collagen fibers inside it, and when it exits, the short wavelengths scatter outward more than the long ones. Blue light scatters. Red light passes through. And what your eye registers from the outside is blue. Not because there's anything blue in there, but because of the physics of how light behaves when it has nothing to absorb it. The same phenomenon makes the sky blue. You are looking at an optical effect built from the absence of pigment, not the presence of color. Blue eyes are, in the most literal sense, an illusion. And, here's the part most people miss, this means that hazel eyes, green eyes, gray eyes, every variation across the spectrum are simply different points along the same axis. More melanin, less scattering, warmer tones. Less melanin, more scattering, cooler tones. The entire visible range of human eye color comes down to a single variable sliding in one direction or another. One biological dial. So who controls the dial? This is where genetics comes in, and where the story most people learned in school starts to fall apart. For most of the 20th century, eye color was taught as a simple dominant recessive trait. Brown dominant, blue recessive, clean and predictable. Two blue-eyed parents, the textbook said, would always have blue-eyed children. Except that isn't true. It never was. And geneticists have known for decades that the real system is considerably more complicated and considerably more interesting. Eye color is controlled primarily by a region on chromosome 15 involving two genes that work together, OCA2 and HERC2. OCA2 actually codes for a protein that regulates melanin production inside the iris cells. HERC2 sits right next to it and acts as a kind of switch. It controls whether OCA2 gets expressed at all. When a particular variant in HERC2 is present, it effectively turns down OCA2, which reduces melanin production, which moves the dial toward blue. But there are other genes involved too. GEY, EYCL1, multiple contributors that interact in ways that are still being mapped. Which is why two blue-eyed parents can, in fact, produce a brown-eyed child. The inheritance isn't a coin flip. It's closer to a mixing board with a dozen channels, and small variations in any one of them can shift the output. If you found this breakdown useful so far, consider subscribing. There's a lot more like this coming, and you don't want to miss it. Now, why does any of this variation exist at all? Why didn't evolution simply settle on one eye color and leave it there? This is where the science opens up into something almost geographic, almost archaeological, because the answer is written in the map of where your ancestors lived, and for how long, and under what kind of light. Melanin is not just a pigment, it is a filter. In the iris, in the skin, in every tissue where it appears, Its core biological function is to absorb ultraviolet radiation and protect the cells beneath it from damage. Near the equator, where UV exposure is intense and year-round, high melanin concentration in the eye and skin is a significant protective advantage. Populations that evolved in those latitudes almost universally have dark eyes and dark skin. The melanin is doing critical work. Move north. Follow your ancestors into higher latitudes, into the long winters of northern Europe, where sunlight arrives at a low angle for months at a time. In that environment, the calculus shifts. UV is less intense. Vitamin D synthesis, which requires sunlight, becomes harder. And some researchers have proposed that reducing melanin concentration, including in the eye, may have had selective advantages in those populations, allowing more light into the visual system in low-light conditions, or correlating with the skin pigmentation changes that improve vitamin D production at northern latitudes. The blue eye, on this reading, isn't a random mutation, it's an adaptation, a solution to a specific problem in a specific place. The mutation itself, the specific HERC2 variant that dramatically reduces OCA2 expression, is estimated to have appeared somewhere between 6 and 10,000 years ago, likely in a single individual somewhere around the region of the Black Sea. Every person on Earth with blue eyes today carries that same mutation. You are, if your eyes are blue, looking at the world through a biological feature that traces back to one genetic event in one person thousands of years ago. That ancestor had brown eyes. Their descendants, over generations, spread across northern Europe, and as they did, the variant spread with them. Today, roughly 8% of the global population carries it. And here's where it gets interesting. Because that single variable, that reduced melanin, has measurable downstream effects that go beyond appearance. Studies have found that people with light-colored eyes show higher sensitivity to bright light, which makes sense structurally. Less melanin means less filtration of incoming light, which can mean more glare and more sensitivity at the same luminosity. Research has also documented that light-eyed individuals have a modestly higher risk of certain UV-related conditions, including ocular melanoma. Again, the absence of protective pigment inside the eye creating slightly less natural defense. Separately, a study published in the journal Pain found that women with light eyes showed measurably higher tolerance for pain associated with childbirth compared to women with dark eyes, a finding that surprised researchers and that points to connections between pigmentation genes and neurological systems that are still being worked out. The body is not a collection of separate systems. Melanin is not just about color. Pull one thread and the whole fabric moves. Before we wrap, tell me in the comments, what color are your eyes? And did anything in this video change how you think about them? I read every one. Most people look in a mirror and see an eye color the way they see a hair color or a shoe size, as a fixed, unremarkable trait cataloged and filed away. But what you are actually looking at, when you look at your own eyes, is a precise record of your ancestry, the latitude your great-great-grandparents lived at, the UV intensity they adapted to, the specific concentration of a single molecule in a thin layer of tissue, and, if your eyes are blue or green or gray, an optical effect so fundamental to physics that the same principle holds the sky above you in color every single day. There is no blue pigment. There never was. What you see is light, scattered by absence, shaped by 10,000 years of adaptation, encoded in a gene that traces to a single person who lived before written language existed. Every pair of eyes you have ever looked into is doing the same thing, holding a compressed, wordless history of a human lineage, readable in color, if you know what color actually is. Now you do.